Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about the implications of delaying the census in India. We also speak about the harrowing experience of a woman from Punjab who ended up in Oman on the pretext of a false job offer. But first, we talk about Delhi. Last week, the central government had passed an ordinance that effectively took away the power of the elected government in Delhi to control the transfers and postings of bureaucrats in the capital. A power that was given to it by the Supreme Court earlier this month. And this is why the ordinance is controversial, because an order by the Supreme Court is technically supposed to be the law of the land. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party, the current elected government in Delhi, had of course come out sharply against the move and had called it a complete contempt of the verdict of the Supreme Court's Constitution bench.
ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट की मैजेस्टी को चैलेंज किया जा रहा है, उनकी पावर को चैलेंज किया जा रहा है कि तुम जो मर्जी ऑर्डर कर दो, हम तुम्हारे सारे ऑर्डर खत्म कर देंगे. सुप्रीम कोर्ट की इंसल्ट की जा रही है. दिस इज अ डायरेक्ट कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट.
But since then, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has been gathering support from various opposition leaders against this ordinance, including from West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. To know more about the issue, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Mallica Joshi.
So Mallica, can you first tell us what the centre's ordinance means for the elected government in Delhi?
So essentially, the elected government will have no control over how or where officers are transferred to or where they are posted in departments, taking away the very crux of the judgment that the Supreme Court Constitution bench had basically come out with. And in the Supreme Court judgment, the Chief Justice, while pronouncing the judgment, he'd spoken about how a government that does not have control over the bureaucracy cannot function effectively, because there's no accountability to the elected government in such cases. That is at the very crux of this entire argument. What AAP has been alleging over the past few years, in fact, is that if we don't have control over who our officers report to, if we don't have control over whether they are lauded for their performance or, punished for it, there is no reason for them to listen to us. And if the bureaucracy does not have any reason to listen to an elected government, it also does not have any reason to implement its decisions, which means that there can be a situation where a decision has been passed by the government, but we will not see it being implemented at all, irrespective of the fields that it is from, whether it is education, health, or departments that do not come under the government, which they don't make laws on in any case.
And what was the centre's argument for passing this ordinance?
The centre's argument in this matter has been that Delhi is a union territory. But even in that sense, it is not like every other union territory because it's also the national capital. So having control over bureaucracy alongside issues like land, policing and law and order is imperative for the proper functioning of the capital of the country. That is at the core of their argument.
Okay, and Mallica, has the AAP government in Delhi said anything about what they will do next to challenge this ordinance?
So the Delhi government and the CM have already said that once the Supreme Court is back from the vacation, they will be filing a contempt petition against the Supreme Court's ordinance. Alongside that, over the past week or so, the Kejriwal government and he himself, they've been talking about drumming up support from opposition parties for the ordinance to be opposed in Rajya Sabha when it comes to be formulated into law.
Right, and to gather support from the opposition parties, Kejriwal is visiting chief ministers of various opposition states. And he has already met with 3 leaders. So talk to us about how these visits are going.
So the idea essentially came up after the ordinance was passed and the party, was looking at the options that it is left with. One, of course, is the legal way. The second is to unite the opposition against the BJP and ask that all parties, even if to just send out a message to the centre that this is something that is not acceptable to them. That is the essential idea. So the Delhi Chief Minister, along with Rajya Sabha member Sanjay Singh and a few AAP ministers in Delhi and the Punjab Chief Minister, met Mamata Banerjee on Tuesday to discuss the ordinance and the step forward. She said after the meeting that TMC will oppose this ordinance in Rajya Sabha. And she also came out against BJP, and she also questioned why the centre had brought this ordinance after the Supreme Court gave a very clear verdict on what they think of the issue.
अरे सुप्रीम कोर्ट जब verdict दिया, it should have been accept the verdict of the Supreme Court. क्या है? दिल्ली का चपरासी को आप क्यों ऊंचे ट्रांसफर करेगा? दिल्ली को एम्प्लॉयज को दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट का अंडर में है, आपका अंडर में नहीं है.
And earlier, Nitish Kumar, the Bihar Chief Minister, and the Bihar Deputy Chief Minister, Tejasvi Yadav, they had met Kejriwal at his house in Delhi. And after the meeting, Nitish Kumar had called the ordinance odd, and he also had questioned the centre's objective and called it an attack on democracy.
अब आप जरा संविधान को देख लीजिए, क्या अधिकार है. जब गवर्नमेंट बनाई जाती है, इलेक्टेड सरकार बनती है, तो उनको जो अधिकार दिया गया है उसको कैसे आप हटा सकते हैं? ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं है. लेकिन
And on Wednesday, Kejriwal met Uddhav Thackeray, and they have also come out in opposition of the ordinance.
And Malika, if Kejriwal does manage to get support from all the leaders he's meeting, what will that mean for the ordinance? And more importantly, what kind of message will that send to the centre?
So, when Nitish Kumar had come to Delhi, at that time, the Aam Aadmi Party had come out with a statement, an official statement that said that the opposition to this ordinance is like a semi-finals to the 2024 Lok Sabha polls. As for the Rajya Sabha and defeating the ordinance in the House, that is very unlikely to happen because the BJP has the numbers to have this ordinance be passed in both houses of the parliament because it requires a simple majority and not a 2/3 majority. So this is more of a political pitch before the Lok Sabha polls than a way to stop the ordinance from coming in as an act. Over the last 5 to 6 years, there have been several talks of opposition unity, the opposition coming together. There have been talks of non-BJP, non-Congress parties aligning and, forming a front. So all of this ties into the idea that all opposition parties should unite against the BJP to defeat it in 2024. How feasible or how likely that is, obviously that remains to be seen. Because within these parties, there are several inter-party issues that will crop up. For example, when it comes to the Congress, the Delhi unit of Congress is completely opposed to providing any sort of support to Kejriwal. That at the very outset is one of the challenges that they will have to overcome.
Right, and apart from meeting with the opposition leaders, can you tell us what the AAP government is doing on the ground to strengthen its position in Delhi?
So inside of Delhi, for now, they have announced that on June 11, they will hold a mega rally where opposition leaders will also be invited to oppose the ordinance. Before that, there will be rallies in Haryana. That's the plan so far. They are also, focusing on how this ordinance is anti-democratic. But the main focus has been for the past few days on creating a joint front with the opposition and to question the legality and also the implications of an ordinance like this in a larger sense of, asking the question on what it means for democracy and federalism across the country. So each party, both BJP and Aam Aadmi Party, are going to use this ordinance and the Supreme Court verdict to its advantage in the coming months. How that plays out on the ground, whether AAP is able to gather some support for itself or BJP is going to get the upper hand, that obviously remains to be seen till the parties hit the ground and they start the campaign on this front.
And next we talk about the census. Ever since 1881, India has been conducting the census every 10 years.
This census is the primary data for almost every socio-economic indicator about India.
That is the Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha, who says that the census is the only statistical exercise in the country.
It's not a survey-based method. You actually go and count each and every person, each and every household. So this is as authentic as it can get.
Now, the last time India conducted the census was in 2011. And the next one was supposed to take place in 2021. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it had to be postponed. This is the first time in the 150-year history of India's census operations that such a delay has occurred. And interestingly, despite the fact that the pandemic has now ended and relative normalcy has been restored, the census operations still haven't begun. To understand the implications of a delayed census, here is Utsa again speaking to Amitabh in this segment.
So Amitabh, can you first tell us why the census hasn't been conducted even after the end of COVID-19 pandemic?
We really don't know why it hasn't happened. It should have happened by now. There was a window of opportunity certainly in 2023, if not 2022 itself. So the census is a two-step exercise. That is, before every person gets counted, that's the main census exercise. There is a preliminary exercise that happens a few months earlier. So the census actually happens in the census year. The enumeration of people happens in the census year. So the counting process would happen in the year in which the census is to be published. So in 2021, the preliminary step is the house listing or house numbering step. That's also called the household survey. Basically, enumerators, before counting the people, they first go and count the number of households across the country. So that happens in the middle of the previous year. So for the 2021 census, this process was supposed to be done in 2020. Now, the 2021 census was postponed because of COVID, quite understandable. It couldn't have been carried out. But after 2021, and certainly after the third wave in 2022, which died down by April, at least died down considerably for most other activities to resume, there has been relative normalcy. And after that, we have not seen the kind of disruption that we witnessed in 2020 and 2021. So while the census could not have been conducted at its scheduled time because of the pandemic, very understandable, we do not really know, and there is no specific reason that has been cited as to why the census operations have not resumed after the return of normalcy. I mean, just to be sure, the meetings are going on. Some preparation exercises have happened, but the actual, either the house listing census could have happened last year, or the actual population enumeration could have happened this year. Both these things have not resumed. So we really don't know what the reason is.
Right, and there isn't any clarity on the timeline for the census as well. I mean, we don't know when we can expect the 2021 census to be conducted. But talking about the time gap, India conducts the census every 10 years. So could you give us the reason behind this 10-year gap?
So there is no particular reason why it should be held 10 years only. Traditionally, it has been held every 10 years. In most of the other countries also, it is held every 10 years. The exercise started long back, 150 years ago, in some countries even before that. And census in those times used to take a lot of time. These days it's much faster. But in a country like India, it could take several years to complete the census. And the preparation also had to begin several years in advance. So practically, by the time you end with one census operation, it was time to begin the next census operations, because it's a very tedious, complex exercise. And the periodicity has to be maintained for another reason as well. That's to ensure that data that you collect and produce is consistent with your past data. Now, if the census happens in 2025, for example, or 2024 or 2025, whenever it happens, now there will be a problem of reconciling that data with previous data sets because the periodicity is not the same. Now, this particular thing was forced on us. It wasn't a voluntary choice that the census has been delayed. So nothing much could have been done about it. But there will be problems in reconciling this data into, make it comparable to previous data sets. Because there are a lot of analysis actually depends on what happened during the decade. And here we are talking not of a decade, we are talking of 13, 14 years. So that data will have to be made comparable. So there will be a problem with that as well.
Okay, and right now there is a 12 years gap. So could you talk about the potential implications of not conducting a census for an extended period?
There will be implications across the board. So what does the census data collect? It collects data on population, of course, family size. It will have information about gender, it will have information about language, it will have information about employment and labor, also economic information, how many households have toilets, how many households have television sets, how many houses have access to internet. So whole lot of information. So obviously the information that you collect here, that becomes the backbone for every other statistical exercise in the country. So every other indicator that you talk about draws upon the data that is collected from the census. So right now what happens is, if you don't have that data from the census, the reliability, the authenticity of your statistical exercises, of all your socioeconomic indicators, that gets a bit diluted. So like, we do not have the 2021 census, for example, but we do have projections for 2021 population, but these are projections. This is not your primary data. So, work doesn't stop. So you will still have the planning exercise going on. You will still rely on some sort of data to do your planning, to do your administrative work, to do even things like investment decisions or the size of the market if you have to gauge, all sorts of things. So you rely on the next best data because your best data is missing, and the best data is produced by census. And for a country like India, it also doesn't give a very good impression that you don't have a primary data source. So there is a slight problem there. And because it feeds into everything, therefore the ramifications are across the board for all sorts of planning exercise, all sorts of administrative exercise. Subsidies have to be given, direct benefits transfers have to be made, all sorts of things. And for everything, your base data that you rely on is from the census.
Right. So without the census, all sorts of policies and all sorts of planning are affected. But Amitabh, the Census Office released a document last week saying that the disruption caused by the pandemic presents an opportunity. Can you tell us what the Census Office meant by that?
So this 2021 was supposed to be a digital census. Initially, it was supposed to be an entirely digital census. What we mean by digital census is, if you remember previous census operations, I can recollect some of those experiences. The enumerators used to come to your house. There used to be a form that they used to fill up in front of you, asking information, and they used to fill up those on paper, and those paper forms would then be submitted. The data from that would be fed into the computer, and then analysis and everything will take place later. 2021 was supposed to be a paperless sort of a census, wherein the enumerators who were supposed to come to our houses, they were supposed to carry a mobile app, an app that was created specially for this reason, and that they would directly feed the data on the app itself. There was also a provision, or I think they have made it now, that people can feed in information on their own as well. And that would be connected to a server backend. So the updation of data would happen in real time. So, it'll cut down on the analysis time also. And it'll make things much more faster, more reliable, that kind of thing. What happened was, during the planning stages, they realized going completely digital might not be entirely practical. There would be difficulties, some complexities, eliminating paper altogether. So they decided, okay, we'll retain both. We'll have paper as well as mobile. So whatever is convenient might be used. So that was the final thing that was decided. Now, this break actually, and this is what they meant when they say that this break might help us in other ways. What they mean is that maybe during this time, they have been able to work on the app so that it's much more robust. And probably this break also enables them to overcome the complexities that was forcing them to go in for a mixed sort of a census and not entirely digital one. So maybe they have overcome those kind of problems. Also allowing people, enabling people to be able to put in their data themselves.
And finally, we talk about the harrowing experience a woman from Punjab faced in Oman recently. But before we begin, here is a quick disclaimer. In this segment, we refer to the victim as Rani. Please note that her name was changed on request. In March this year, Rani moved from Kapurthala in Punjab to Oman's capital city of Muscat after her maternal aunt said that she had secured a job for her as a caretaker in a hospital there. According to the Indian Express's Anju Agnihotri Chaba, who spoke to Rani, Her only aim was to secure a better future for her family in India.
Yeah, she belongs to a very poor family and her husband is a part-time taxi driver. The couple has a 5-year-old daughter and they are living in a small rented house in a village of Kapurthala district. Because her husband was not able to make the two ends meet, so she decided to help him out and she was talking to her relatives and knowns if they can find some job for her. So during that time only her maternal aunt told her that there is an opportunity in Oman as a caretaker in a hospital and if you want to go then she can arrange everything for her and within 2 years she can earn good amount of money. So she discussed this with her husband who readily gave his nod and then her aunt charged rupees 70,000 from the couple for making all the documents and arranging a ticket for her.
So on the 16th of March, Rani landed in Muscat, but things quickly took a turn for the worse. Soon after arriving, she realized that there was no job. What's worse is that her passport and phone were taken away by the so-called agents that her aunt had put her in touch with. They are the ones who then locked her in a room, gave her very little food, and made her sign an agreement.
Which was in English language. And the woman is illiterate for all the practical purposes. So after 2-3 days, when she asked that when she would be joining her job, so they said that they are arranging a job for her. Then after a week or so, she was taken to a place and that was, according to her, was not a hospital. So she was asked to do a domestic work there.
But soon these agents asked her to perform what Rani described as immoral acts. But Rani refused to comply.
So then they took her back to that place where she was kept after landing in Muscat. So then she said they started beating her mercilessly and they were also not providing her proper meal. Then somehow she managed to tell the things to her husband that it was not a job which was promised to her.
After Rani managed to get in touch with her husband, he contacted the maternal aunt who had arranged for Rani to go to Muscat. But the aunt advised her to do what the agents were telling her, at least for a couple of months.
And you make some money in 2-3 months and then I will arrange a ticket for you. But this woman said that I will not do this act. So this is how she came to know that she was taken for a ride.
In April, her husband filed a police complaint, but that too proved useless. Finally, Rani's husband approached Jalandhar Rajya Sabha MP Sant Balbir Singh Kejriwal, who, with some help from the Ministry of External Affairs, was able to reunite Rani with her family in India. So far, no action has been taken against Rani's aunt or the agents involved. But Anju says that Rani is not alone. There are many more women from Punjab who have ended up in the Gulf on the pretext of a false job offer.
Actually, this trend of taking women as a domestic maid or a caretaker, this trend had started, say, in 2015-16 in Punjab. Then COVID came and because of the ban on the international flights, this trade also got halted. And when again these flights resumed, so trade also resumed. And now for the past couple of years, it has been flourishing like anything. And Rani told me that her, 35 more women from Punjab are sailing in the same boat. And she was saying that a small meal a day was being provided to these trapped women in Muscat so that they don't die, at least.
And Anju says that the women who refuse to do what the agents ask them to, they're beaten up and starved.
In the past 6 months, if you see, around 50-60 girls, they have already came back and all the women, they have told the same story. And those who are ready to do, they are happy. But those who are not, they have the same story to tell you. Even the government is aware about this thing. And because MP Baba Kejriwal has written so many letters to External Affairs Department also. And with the help of External Affairs Department only, he has been able to rescue at least half dozen women from Oman in the past, say, 3-4 months only.
And it is because of Kejriwal's efforts that the police and the administration in Punjab are aware of this issue. But Anju says that no serious efforts are being taken by the government or the police to prevent this from happening.
What they are doing, they are just lodging some kind of FIRs. But after that, there is no effort to bring such people back or those who are living in India or in Punjab to arrest them. Even if like somebody is being arrested, so later on they are being released. So there are no serious efforts are being seen on the government side as well as from police side. Because Rani was telling that every day 10 to 15 women, they are coming to that area where she was kept.
Now, although the media has been reporting on such stories in the past, Rani told Anju that because she is uneducated, she wasn't aware of this issue.
And then she also suggested that the Punjab government should launch an awareness drive, particularly among the uneducated women as well as in the rural areas. Because the women who are uneducated, who are poor, who are living in the rural areas, they are the main targets of such agents.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin, Shashank Bhargava, and me, Rahel Philipose. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like this show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.